Hey everybody, Wayne here. In today's overview review, I'm going to take a look at Target for Today, designed by Steve Dixon and published by Legion Wargames. Target for Today is a narrative-driven solitaire wargame, placing you in command of either a B-17 or B-24 bomber during the daylight bombing campaigns of World War II. You will choose a bombing campaign ranging from 1942 to 1945. You'll fly either with the 8th Air Force out of England or the 15th Air Force out of Italy. You pick a bomber, you name your crew, and you begin going on bombing missions. Hope you can survive the entire 25 mission plus career before your cruise tour is complete and they can go home. Let's do a quick overview. I have a complete playthrough for an in-depth look at the game. I'll cover my pros and cons, and as always, I'll end with my final thoughts. All right, let's get on to the table. All right, so I have a pretty standard setup here for Target for Today. We have the bomber mat up there, which in this case, you can see it is a B-17F. There are a variety of different types of bombers available in the game. B-17F, which we have out here, the B-17G, B-24D, and J, Liberator bombers, and the YB-40, which was a gunship variant of the B-17 Flying Fortress. With this setup here, again, you can see I have the bomber sheet, which has different crew members in their different locations, whether it's the bombardier up front, tail gunner out back, and then everyone in between. On that same sheet, you're going to have locations of where your bomber is in the bomber group. So obviously the bombers, right, flying into Europe didn't fly alone. They flew in groups. They flew as part of cells and then in larger bomb groups in this combat box formation. You're going to roll randomly to determine where you are. Depending on where you are, there may be modifiers. You know, if you're tail end Charlie or if you're lead bomber, you may get more enemy fighters coming after you. Then, speaking of enemy fighters, down here you have the battle mat. So you're going ahead and place one of those bomber, these really nice looking bomber counters or sheets, whatever you want to call them, on the actual combat mat right in the middle. You're going to place the appropriate gunner tokens for all the different gun positions you have. As you can see, the Flying Fortress truly was a Flying Fortress. And then on this, you're going to have two other key things. One, obviously the clock positions, right? 12 o'clock high, 3 o'clock high, 9 o'clock low. Those are going to be where the German fighters are going to be coming in after you. And the German fighters, there's a variety of them. You're going to encounter a lot of kind of the standard Me-109, Focke-Wulf 190, represented with these nice big counters. There also, as you get later in the war, there's going to be jet fighters that can pop up coming after you. They're going to be placed out as you roll, determining, okay, you got one coming in at 3 o'clock high, you got one coming in at 6 o'clock level, and you're going to fire at them, and they're going to fire at you if they survive your defensive fire. Then potentially, they're going to come back. This number here is going to represent multiple passes they're going to make against you. And ultimately, there may be multiple waves of fighters, so you could be fighting off 1, 2, or many fighters. It just depends on kind of how you roll and what's going on in the game. Now, the other big thing besides the fighters out here and the clock locations is the zone track over here. So you can see where we have a B-17 counter, and then I have a primary target counter as well. When you determine your mission, and we'll get to kind of the sequence of play in a second here, when you determine a mission, you're going to place out the primary target counter where that is. The zones represent distance abstractly, right? A closer zone, a lower number is going to be closer to your base, either in England or Italy. Farther away means you're flying farther, right? Targets in Belgium or France, it's probably going to be a lower zone. If it's in Germany, it's probably going to be up here. You're going to fly from zone to zone. In each of those zones, you're going to be checking for the weather. You're going to be checking for any mechanical failures, checking your bomber form's contrails, and then you're going to be possibly dealing with enemy fighters. If you don't, you continue on, movement continues, you make it to the target zone, you're still going to have enemy fighters, now you're going to have flak, then you're going to bomb the target, you're going to turn around, and you're going to head on back home. The game itself, and those are the key sort of components that come in the box. This is a separate player aid I downloaded off Board Game Geek, so if you just want to worry about what's in the box, just focus on kind of what's in the middle here. Same thing with the dice, these dice with the American Star and the German Cross, those are actually my dice, custom dice. While you're flying these missions, you know, your pilots or your crew members, they can take hits, they can become injured, you know, whether it's a light wound or serious wound or killed in action. They can suffer frostbite if the heating systems in the bomber are damaged and you stay at altitude instead of dropping low. You could encounter anywhere from just a couple fighters to a ton of fighters. If you watch my playthrough, I didn't encounter too many. It was a short mission. I had good fighter coverage the whole way. It worked out for me. On a longer mission into Germany, where you only have partially good or only have fair or poor fighter coverage, you're probably going to deal with a lot of German fighters, and they're going to start causing some damage to your bomber and to you. Damage to your bomber is going to, take out guns, can reduce its chances of landing successfully, can, again, eliminate systems, can harm its ability to drop the bombs, etc., etc. The game itself, when you're playing it, is, creating a bomber, creating a crew, naming them. And let's go ahead and look at, this is a sheet that I had from my playthrough. So you can see I have this is B-17F mission log sheet. And I think this is the sheet that comes with the game. So pretty standard, you name your bomb. And this is where it's almost like a little bit of a role playing, a narrative driven game, right? You're naming the bomber yourself. And there's things online you can find to come up with names. Otherwise, I'd say use your imagination, come up with one. Name your crew members. Here I went ahead and named everybody. You're keeping track of what campaign it is. I mentioned earlier, anywhere from kind of 1942 to 1945. 6 campaigns, by the way. And again, you can be in either Italy or you can be in France, or coming out of England. In this particular one, it was campaign 3, the first mission I flew, flying out of Thorpe Abbotts in England. Target was the Industry in Antwerp. And I went bombing. I was successful. I was on target with my bombs, although only 30% of them hit. Considered successful back in the day. During that, you can see I did encounter some fighters. You can see where I marked off some ammunition that was shot off. And I had the engineer top turret gunner, C. Edwards. He had 1 kill, although at the end, the Gunnery Commission denied his kill, so he didn't actually get credit for it. At the same time, when I talked about the zones, right, what does that mean? You're moving from zone to zone. Again, this is the sheet from my playthrough. When you're moving from zone to zone, there's going to be, and you can see here if you can read my sloppy handwriting, zones 2, 3, 4, and then 4 again, because you stay in the target zone twice, come back 3, 2, and then 1 is the landing zone. You have zone modifiers. That's modifiers for basically whether you encounter German fighters or not, generally speaking, right? Closer to England, there's going to be less. You get over, in this case, Belgium, there's going to be more, or at least a greater chance. I had good fighter escort my whole mission. Zone weather, with 50% cloud cover, 100% cloud cover, hazy, clear. You never know what weather you're going to get. Any mechanical failures, use your bomber form contrails, which allows German fighters to find you easier. Do you stay in and out of formation, or is your formation disrupted? Are you below 10,000 feet? You may have to do that. It's going to help you on your bombing run, but you're obviously more susceptible to flak enemy fighters, so it's really kind of, but maybe you had to because you lost the oxygen system in your bomber, so you had to go down that low to keep your crew members alive. The fighter resistance, that's the German fighters, was a moderate, none, light, heavy. You never know what you're going to get. How many waves of fighters? I mentioned that before. And then this is just your number of fighters removed. That's your escorts. Do they eliminate fighters, kind of ease the burden on you? Do you take evasive action that turn? And what level is the flak? You will encounter flak over the target zone. You're keeping track of these details not as a negative, right? Not as something that's finicky or anything like that. It's part of the game. It's part of the mission. It's part of a campaign. It's a narrative-driven game. It's almost like a role-playing game that's with a war game combined, right? Which war games originally had roots in role-playing, right? Or vice versa, right? Role-playing had roots in war games. So this is that type of game. You're creating a story. You are rolling, and there's a lot of charts, so we can go and look at the books quick. And then we'll wrap up the overview here. So there's a variety of books and charts, right? So you're going to have a rules of play. This is what you want to read through, skim through, whatever you want to do. Definitely do that first. Then there is a book of tables. You don't need to read through it. This is the tables you will reference while you're playing. So read the rules once. Then you're going to want to have this tables book next to you. This is where you're going to reference. You're going to be rolling on those things. When I talked about the weather, contrails, enemy fighters, you're rolling to determine all those things, right? You're building that story off the tables. After that, or during the game, or actually this one's the very beginning. So at the Gazetteer here, you're going to go ahead and find your target. So this is where you can see target listings, 8th and 15th Air Force. This is where I found, okay, we're going after Antwerp. We're going to bomb the Industry in Antwerp. We're going to roll. It's got cities. It's got the zone modifiers. Remember, traveling on the zones and those modifiers for enemy fighters. All that stuff's going to be in this book. So you really reference it at the beginning. And then finally, this is if primarily the pilot's flight operating instructions for Army models and lists them off. This is basically for if your bomber takes damage, you roll on this to see, hey, what was hit and what area took damage, and then what were the results of that damage. So even though it comes with multiple rule booklets, for the most part, you're going to be having the rules that you read and then occasionally referencing, and then you're going to be running through the game tables that will then guide your experience of playing Target for today. All right, that's quick and dirty. Combat, obviously, when you have those enemy fighters coming in, you have them coming in certain areas. Obviously, you're not every gun on the B-17 or on your B-24 can hit each German fighter, right? You can only have certain ones hit. So you have fields of fire that are listed here on your bomber mat. There's also cheat sheets. It's also in the rule book that'll tell you, hey, this fighter over here can only be maybe targeted by a left waist and maybe the ball turret. He can maybe be targeted by the nose gun and the top turret. So you're not going to be able, even though you have a ton of guns, you're not going to be able to use all of them at any one German fighter. Or even if you have multiple German fighters coming after you, because you have so many different guns, you're going to be able to target all of them at once, or hopefully all of them, right? In the game, you set up that mission, right? Talk about setting up your bomber, what your campaign is, where you're targeting. You launch, you take off, you're making sure you take off safely, and you're in formation. You're going to run through a sequence of play where you're running through checking. I mentioned weather, is the mission recalled, mechanical failure, etc. Do you encounter German fighters? You resolve the combat. When you're over the target, you're going to have German combat or potential German fighters. You're going to have flak. You're going to drop your bombs, flak again, German fighters again, and then you're out of the zone and you are headed back home. And eventually at the end, you want to try to land successfully. So hopefully your bomber hasn't been too damaged and you're able to make it all the way to England or Italy and land and get ready for tomorrow's mission. So that is, in a nutshell, an overview of how Target for Today works. I know it didn't explain it completely, but hey, this is just an overview. Check out my mission playthrough to really get a good idea. I have charts pop up, all kinds of good stuff like that, and some fun little video clips I play during it. So please check that one out if you haven't yet. Otherwise, let's go to pros and cons. And as always, cons first. All right, I'm going to jump right in. My one real problem with Target for Today is most missions just take too long to play. Now, if you end up with a bombing mission with a target in Belgium or France, it may only be 4 or 5 zones. And those feel pretty good. But if your target is in Germany, that can double the distance to travel. If you go after a target is in, say, zone 10, you have to travel not only through 10 zones, but then 10 zones back. That's 20 zones where, you're checking different aspects, you're rolling on multiple charts, then you have the potential to encounter German fighters 18 times. So if you were 20 zones, there's going to be 18 times where you're going to potentially encounter German fighters. That's too many zones to travel through. That's too many attacks by German fighters, and it just can be a little overwhelming, and it can just drag the missions out. I played a mission to zone 12, so I went to zone 12 and then all the way back. So 24 zones. It took 3 hours to complete. That's just too long in my opinion. Now, there are many fan-made tables on BoardGameGeek that act to decrease mission time, primarily by decreasing your frequency of encounters with German fighters. But out of the box, expect to spend a lot of time flying some of the missions. My second issue is, with all the realism in the game, right, and it's very thematic, very realistic, and we'll get to that in my pros, where is the strategic map? You're keeping track of so many details, and you're playing out every single wave and pass of each German fighter, yet there's no map with your bomber on it or representing your bomber group or anything like that. Instead, the battle board has this little track, right, with the zones on it. Honestly, a little boring and unthematic, which is surprising considering how thematic the rest of the game is. I want to see a map of Europe to give me a better idea of where my bombing missions are taking me. Okay, that's it for the cons. On to the pros. First, the graphical design and presentation is top-notch. The battle mat here, it's wonderfully designed. I think it just looks beautiful. Your bombers, they're large and colorful, right? So I have it under Plexi right now, but you can see my B-17F. But remember, you put these down. Look at these beautiful cards that represent your bomber. The fact that you change these out and put them on the battle board, I just love that. The German fighter counters, they're huge, right? They're talking, I think, an inch or bigger than an inch. I mean, look at these things, you know? We looked at a couple of them. I don't have any jet fighters out right now, but you can kind of see these, right? We looked at them before. Look how, like, just big, colorful, the top-down silhouette looks nice. And you put them out here, I think they look absolutely fantastic. Gives you almost like a true, especially when you start having a bunch of them on here like this, it starts really kind of in your face of like, look at all these German fighters coming after me. You know, they really stand out. And, you know, when you see that many on the board here coming after your bomber, there's like a palpable feeling of anxiety, right? Like, oh no, I hope my defensive fire knocks out a bunch of these German fighters, because otherwise I'm about to take some hits on my bomber and my crew members. The books that come with the game are all black and white, but I don't care. When I see my flying fortress on the board with my crew at their assigned stations and the gun counters ready to be assigned to attacking German Me-109s, I just get excited. It's just plain fun and exciting. Second, I love the variety in the game. It's not just a generic B-17 going on bombing missions, right? There's two types of B-17s, an early war and a late war version. There's also that gunship variant. There's also the B-24 Liberator, right? Two versions of the B-24 Liberator. You can fly missions from either the 8th Air Force in England or the 15th Air Force in Italy. And the German fighters, they range from models that enter in 1942 to all the way to 1945, including jet fighters, you know, like the Messerschmitt 262. Besides that variety of content, the game comes with a bunch of optional rules. Now, you guys know I'm not always big on optional rules. I like to play base games usually because I like to see what they ultimately decide was like the complete package. This is how it should be played. Here you go. But it's still nice that they're there. And for those of you who do modify your games and embrace those optional rules, I know a lot of you do, the possibilities with Target for Today are nearly endless. Third, I love the narrative aspect of Target for Today. You know, let's break it down for those new to this type of game, because the mechanisms in this type of game aren't for everyone. At its core, Target for Today is primarily about creating a crew, then rolling on tables to generate a story. In this story, you are going on missions, encountering German fighters, shooting some down, while your bomber may or may not take damage. You drop your bombs on the target, then you attempt to safely return to base. While doing that, you keep track of injuries to your crew, enemy fighters shot down, turning your crew, if they survive long enough, into ace gunners and experienced pilots, which then give them bonuses later on in later missions. It's a story generator with some small, although sometimes crucial, choices along the way. When German fighters attack, there's not a lot of player agency. You assign what guns can target that particular fighter, then you roll dice to resolve it. But there will be key decisions that occur along the way. If you take enough damage or suffer enough injuries to your crew, do you abort the mission and turn back? What about if you're under attack by multiple fighters? Do you commit to evasive flying, but possibly go out of formation from the other bombers? If you're not flying in formation, you are vulnerable to future fighter attacks. What about bombing from under 10,000 feet? Your bombing accuracy will improve, but again, now you're more vulnerable to fighters and German flak. It's not a hex encounter game, right, with 50 units on the board, which gives you basically 50 choices a turn. It's a narrative-driven game with 2 or 3 choices a turn, and a lot of story generation via dice rolling and checking tables. I love both types of games personally, so for me, it just works. All right, that's it for my pros and cons. Let's end with my final thoughts. Target for Today is fun, yet aggravating. It's addictive, yet like eating, say, too much candy. You can get sick of eating too much of it. Same thing with this game. Now, if you play computer games, you'll understand what I'm about to say, the point I'm trying to make here. And even if you don't, hopefully my explanation will make sense anyway. Target for Today feels like one of those computer games that out of the box, or after you download it, right, nowadays, has a great concept and solid bones, but at times there's something missing from bringing it all together. However, as soon as modders get their hands on it, the game comes alive. That is Target for Today. Instead of modders, it's all those players with a passion for the game and the history it simulates, a love for this style of narrative game. Those people who are releasing updated charts, expanded player aids, comprehensive log sheets, etc. There's even a fan-created Android app for the game. If you pick up Target for Today and you do find the game out of the box lacking, your first stop needs to be the forums and files section for the game on BoardGameGeek. An exploration of those files can turn an average game into an exceptional one. I'm not much of a tinkerer with my games. Again, you guys know my thoughts on optional rules and things like that. If you watch a lot of my videos, you know that. I want games to work out of the box without me having to download or print or make anything. And Target for Today is definitely playable out of the box. But for it to really shine, for it to just take over your imagination, you need to take some effort, expand on what comes in the box. And here's the thing. Target for Today, it just has a certain draw. Maybe it's a topic, maybe it's the art, maybe it's just the production, right? It's the design, it's everything together. It has a certain magical ability to tell a story. And if you get hooked on that, you will want to explore all the additional content that has been created for the game. It won't feel onerous, it won't feel like a chore, instead it will be exciting. How about this table that I found that adjusts the frequency of German fighter attacks? How about this new log sheet that makes keeping track of every minute detail of my missions easier, faster? How about those expanded and detailed target lists? How about this fantastic player aid that speeds up gameplay? There is so much fan-made content available, you can spend months exploring and playing it all. Target for Today is fun, although flawed right out of the box. But if you put some time into massaging the game, plugging in new content that works for you, and removing or adjusting the aspects that drag, you can take what starts off as an imperfect game and make it great. Before I end, I do want to do like kind of a new thing that I'll do with some of my review videos, and that is offer a reading suggestion. So for Target for Today, and again, when this video is being filmed and is being published, Masters of the Air, which is a TV show very similar to Band of Brothers, the Pacific War show from Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks. They have one on Apple TV called Masters of the Air. Now this book by Donald Miller, America's Bomber Boys Who Fought the Air War Against Germany, is a fantastic book on the subject. As you can see, it is a very thick book. There's a lot here. Yes, it focuses on the U.S. 8th Air Force, and specifically there's a lot on the Bloody 100th, which is what the Masters of the Air TV show covers. But it does explain, it goes everything. There's too much content here for just one, right? It covers a lot of stuff, and I definitely recommend this book, Masters of the Air, from Donald Miller, as a complement to the game. It'll just help you be immersed. And, maybe you'll learn some stuff. You'll read some real human stories about the crew. So when you think of these crew, instead of just being chits, you'll start connecting them with the people, the stories of these men that you'll read about in this book. Okay, thank you to everyone for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think of my video and this game in the comments below. And until next time, everyone, later.